Under the humid Florida sun, the community of Maplewood Estates looked like a painting. Rows of palm trees, bright mailboxes that all matched, and neighbors who waved with those polite smiles that never quite reached their eyes. Every hedge trimmed, every flower bed approved. From the outside, it was a paradise. But perfection, as it turned out, came with a price, one enforced by a woman named Karen Mallory, the HOA president who ruled the neighborhood like her personal kingdom. Karen was the type who loved control. Her voice carried over every board meeting, her perfume over every cul-de-sac. People said she could get the city to repaint your curb in a day, or fine you into bankruptcy if you crossed her. To most, she was respectable. To some, terrifying. And everyone knew her teenage daughter, Alyssa, spoiled, loud, and untouchable. If Karen was the queen of Maplewood, Alyssa was its reckless princess. It was late summer when a new homeowner named Daniel Pierce moved in with his wife, Lena. They'd saved for years to buy a piece of peace, a quiet home near the lake where Daniel could park his ATV, his pride and joy from his younger days of off-roading adventures. To him, the HOA rules felt strict but harmless. No boats on driveways, no flags without approval, no fences over 4 feet high. He'd seen worse. What he didn't see coming was that those rules didn't apply to everyone. From the first week, Daniel noticed the same car speeding down the street every night. A white Jeep with music blasting, exhaust rattling. The driver? Alyssa Mallory. She'd park in the middle of the road, toss her energy drink cans into a neighbor's yard, and laugh. Once, Daniel saw her nearly hit a dog. He mentioned it casually to a neighbor trimming his lawn. The man lowered his voice and said, "Don't bother complaining. The board won't touch her. She's the president's kid." That was Daniel's first warning, though he didn't realize it yet. Over the next month, Daniel attended his first HOA meeting. Karen stood at the head of the long table in the clubhouse, a smile too wide to be sincere. She spoke about community unity and preserving standards. When Daniel introduced himself, she shook his hand just long enough to appear friendly, but moved on before he could mention the noise issue. He caught Alyssa outside afterward, sitting on the hood of her Jeep, scrolling her phone, surrounded by friends. She didn't acknowledge him, just revved the engine twice and sped off, tires screeching, a warning of her own. Lena told him to let it go. "It's just a teenager," she said. "Don't start drama with the president." Daniel tried to agree. He focused on fixing his garage, cleaning his tools, and setting up a small shed where he stored his red ATV. Locked, covered, and parked neatly, because rules were rules. Then came the 4th of July weekend, the day that would split Maplewood Estates in two. The Mallorys hosted a neighborhood barbecue. Invitations went out to everyone, including Daniel and Lena. Music echoed down the street, lights hung from every tree. Karen floated through the crowd with a wine glass, boasting about HOA landscaping projects. Alyssa paraded around in designer sunglasses, snapping photos for social media. Daniel went mostly to blend in, though something about their house, the sheer size, the luxury cars, the subtle fear people showed when talking to Karen, made him uneasy. Later that night, as fireworks lit the sky, Daniel noticed Alyssa wandering toward his property line. She wasn't subtle. She eyed his ATV cover, touched the handlebars, then laughed to a friend. "That's so cute. My mom would freak if she saw me on that thing." Her friend giggled. Daniel let it slide. She was just showing off, he thought, but he should have locked the garage twice that night. The next morning, the silence felt wrong. The garage door stood slightly open, just a few inches, enough to let in the sticky air. Daniel froze. The ATV, gone. He searched everywhere, then ran to his home security monitor. The footage loaded slowly, like the world itself was holding its breath. Then there she was, Alyssa Mallory, in full daylight, climbing onto his ATV with a friend filming her on a phone. She grinned at the camera before driving off. It was so bold, so casual, that Daniel watched the clip twice. convinced it had to be a prank. But when he showed Lena, her face went pale. "She stole it," she whispered. "Karen's daughter stole your ATV." He printed the images and marched straight to the Mallory's house. Karen answered the door in her pink blazer, as if she'd been expecting company. Daniel held out the picture. "Your daughter took my ATV," he said, keeping his voice steady. "I want it returned before I call the police." Karen's expression didn't change. She glanced at the photo, then at him. "That's a serious accusation," she said smoothly. "I'm sure there's some misunderstanding." "There's a video," Daniel insisted. She smiled again, that politician's smile, and said, "Then let's not make a scene, shall we? I'll talk to her." She closed the door gently, leaving Daniel standing there stunned. That evening, an email arrived from the HOA. "Notice of violation. Unsecured property visible from public view. Fine, $250. Daniel stared at it for a full minute before laughing in disbelief. They were fining him for being robbed. And just like that, the perfect neighborhood started to crack. The spoiled HOA president's daughter had stolen his ATV, and the cover-up had already begun. By Monday morning, the calm streets of Maplewood Estates felt heavier. The sun still glared off polished driveways, sprinklers still whispered across lawns. But for Daniel Pierce, the neighborhood's quiet rhythm now sounded false. Somewhere behind those white fences, he knew the truth was being buried. He filed a police report that same day. The officer, a young deputy from the county precinct, scrolled through Daniel's phone footage, eyebrows lifting. "Clear as day," he muttered. "That's the Mallory girl?" Daniel nodded. The deputy exhaled. "I'll write it up, but since it's property taken within the HOA grounds, it might get messy. They usually treat this as a civil issue." "Messy?" Daniel repeated. "It's theft." "She stole my ATV." The deputy shrugged, tired already. "Sir, her mom runs the HOA board. We'll contact her for a statement." That sentence stayed with him the whole ride home. Her mom runs the HOA. By evening, the rumor mill had started. Neighbors walked their dogs slower than usual, stealing glances at his driveway. One even whispered, "You're brave going after Karen." Another offered a polite but nervous smile and hurried away. Lena tried to stay calm. "Maybe Karen will do the right thing. Maybe she'll make Alyssa apologize." Daniel didn't answer. He was watching the HOA email thread. The subject line read, "Urgent community safety and accountability." Inside was Karen's carefully worded message. "Residents are reminded to secure recreational vehicles and personal property to prevent misunderstandings or misplaced items. The board takes safety seriously and discourages false accusations that damage neighborhood harmony." Daniel felt his stomach drop. She just turned his complaint into a neighborhood warning, implying he was lying. That night, his phone buzzed with an unknown number. He answered, voice tight. "Mr. Pierce," a woman said, calm and rehearsed. "This is Melissa Denton, the HOA's vice chair. Karen asked me to mediate the situation before it escalates." He replied, "There's nothing to mediate. I just want my ATV back." "I understand," she said, "but perhaps you misread the footage. Alyssa mentioned she borrowed it for a quick spin and meant to return it." "Borrowed?" Daniel said, incredulous. "Without asking?" "With my garage lock pried open." "Let's avoid language like stolen, please," Melissa said quickly. "It complicates things legally." The call ended before he could speak again. Minutes later, an HOA board notice appeared in his mailbox. Another fine, this time for aggressive behavior toward board members. Lena stared at the paper. "They're baiting you," she warned. Daniel paced the kitchen. "No, they're covering it up." He started documenting everything. Emails, timestamps, photos of his broken lock, even screenshots of Alyssa's public post where she bragged, "Took this bad boy for a ride," with his red ATV visible in the background. When he presented it all to the police follow-up desk, the clerk flipped through the papers, sighed, and said, "We'll attach it to your report, but honestly, the HOA is calling this a misunderstanding. Unless it's found off property, it's tricky. Tricky, the word tasted bitter. Over the next week, his phone buzzed with new violation notices. Trash bin visible after 6 p.m. $75 fine. Lawn height exceeds 3.5 inches. $100 fine. Unauthorized shed paint. $125 fine. Karen's digital signature sat neatly at the bottom of each. One evening, Daniel drove past the Mallory house. There, under their carport, sat his ATV, covered with a tarp but recognizable by the sticker he'd placed near the handlebar. He snapped photos from the street and emailed them to the police. Hours later, he received a polite response. "Thank you, we will review the materials." But review never came. Instead, the following morning, a notice was taped to his front door. Cease and desist harassment of HOA members. Failure to comply will result in legal action sign. Karen Mallory. That was when the fear began to shift into anger. Daniel wasn't just a victim of theft anymore. He was being painted as the villain. Every attempt to defend himself turned into ammunition against him. The spoiled HOA president's daughter had stolen his ATV, but the mother, shielded by her board, was rewriting the story. Lena urged him to lie low. "They'll tire out," she said. "People like Karen always do." But Daniel couldn't. Each fine felt like a wound, each silence from the police like betrayal. So he turned to the only people left, the neighbors themselves. He printed flyers detailing what happened, including stills from the video. He slipped them into mailboxes one night, careful not to break any more rules. By morning, whispers spread faster than sprinklers could turn. Some neighbors texted him quietly. "We saw her on it too. Karen threatened to fine us if we mentioned it." The illusion of Karen's perfect leadership was cracking, but so was Daniel's patience. That afternoon, Alyssa pulled up in her white Jeep again, idling at the end of his driveway. She smirked and revved the engine twice, the sound echoing like mockery. Daniel filmed her through the window. She laughed, flipped him off, and sped away. He turned to Lena. "They think they're untouchable," she whispered. "In this neighborhood, they probably are." But Daniel had already decided something. If the system was built to protect them, he'd find a way to expose it from the inside. That night, under the flicker of his porch light, he installed new cameras, hidden ones this time. Every corner, every angle. If the HOA wanted to play games, he'd record every move. The spoiled HOA president's daughter had stolen his ATV, and her mother had covered it up. But Daniel Pierce was done playing by their rules. The real fight was just beginning, and Maplewood Estates was about to learn how far one man would go for the truth. By the second week after the theft, Maplewood Estates didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like a stage, and every spotlight was aimed at Daniel Pierce. Neighbors who once waved now crossed the street when they saw him. Cars slowed near his house only to speed up again. Word had spread, not the truth, but Karen Mallory's version of it. The story now was that Daniel was an unstable homeowner harassing the president's daughter. That lie worked faster than any truth could. Each morning, Daniel's inbox filled with new HOA violations. The font was polite. The message was poison, greater than, "Your trash bin was left curbside past 9 p.m. Your lawn shows signs of neglect. You were observed using aggressive language toward a board member." Fines stacked higher than his grocery bills. Karen's digital signature stamped every single one. Lena begged him to stop fighting. "You can't win against them, Daniel," she said, voice trembling. "They have the board, the police, the neighbors." We're alone, but Daniel couldn't back down now. The spoiled HOA president's daughter had stolen his ATV, and her mother was bearing the evidence under paperwork and fear. Still, he tried to live normally. He went to work. He fixed dinner, but the peace was gone. One night he heard a noise outside, a faint scrape followed by a hiss. He stepped out with a flashlight. Both front tires of his truck were slashed. His heart pounded as the beam of light caught movement down the street. Someone running toward a white Jeep. The same laugh he'd heard on the security footage echoed through the night. The next morning, the HOA email alert popped up again. Greater than reminder. Please refrain from parking vehicles on the street overnight. Violations will be cited. It was mockery now, and Daniel knew it. He filed another police report, but the officer this time was curt. You don't have proof who did it, he said. I've got security footage. The officer sighed. If it's the Mallory girl again, we'll need a formal witness. I can't escalate this based on suspicion. Suspicion. The word burned. Karen, meanwhile, was smiling her way through HOA newsletters about community harmony and false allegations damaging our image. Then came the HOA meeting, the one that changed everything. Daniel showed up early at the clubhouse, his printed photos and videos neatly arranged in a folder. The other board members arrived slowly. Melissa, the vice chair who spoke like a lawyer, Tom, the treasurer who avoided eye contact, and two others Daniel barely knew. Karen walked in last, dressed like she was attending a political fundraiser. When she saw Daniel, her lips curved upward. Mr. Pierce. Here to clear up the confusion, I hope? He stood. I'm here to get my property back. Karen gestured toward the audience seats. Please sit. We'll handle this properly. The meeting began with the usual agenda: landscaping budgets, neighborhood events, all a performance before the main act. When Daniel's turn came, he spoke clearly, his voice steady despite the tension. He presented the still images, the time-stamped video of Alyssa taking the ATV, the Facebook screenshots. Murmurs filled the room. Karen kept her composure. That footage is inconclusive, she said. It could be anyone. Daniel leaned forward. Anyone with your daughter's face? A gasp spread through the audience. Karen's tone shifted. Icy, sharp. Watch your language, Mr. Pierce. The board has already reviewed this matter and found no misconduct. Continuing these accusations constitutes harassment. He looked around the table. None of the board members met his eyes. Melissa whispered something to Karen, who nodded. Then Karen declared, This meeting is adjourned. Daniel stood frozen. Adjourned? You didn't even... Security will escort you out if you continue, she interrupted. It was like a switch flipped. Everyone stood, pretending not to see him. The air was heavy with silent obedience. Daniel left the clubhouse, humiliated and furious. That night, his mailbox was pried open. Inside, among the bills and threats, was a single typed note. Drop it or we'll make you leave. No signature, no return address. Lena found him standing there, fists clenched. The note crumpled in his hand. It's not worth it, she whispered. They're dangerous, Daniel. He looked back at their house, his house, and something in his expression hardened. They already took what's mine, he said quietly. Now they're trying to take my dignity. I'm not letting them win. That week, Daniel upgraded every camera around his home. He installed motion lights, hidden recorders, backup storage on a cloud account. Every night, he sat at his desk watching the footage like a detective solving his own case. Then, one night around 2 a.m., one of the cameras triggered. A figure crept along the side of his house, flashlight in hand. The image was grainy, but he recognized the outline. Long hair, hoodie, cell phone glowing faintly. Alyssa. She sprayed something on his siding, then ran off. By morning, he saw it clearly, in red paint, LIAR. The message wasn't subtle, it was psychological warfare. Daniel sent the footage to the HOA board, demanding accountability. The reply came from Karen herself. Greater than graffiti is unfortunate. Please refrain from making baseless claims unless you have irrefutable proof. That was the breaking point. Daniel realized Karen didn't fear evidence. She controlled it. As long as the board believed her, truth didn't matter. He could scream into every microphone in the neighborhood, and she'd still win, unless he found a way to expose her outside the HOA's walls. That night, Daniel reached out to someone he hadn't spoken to before, a former resident named Greg Hanley, whose name appeared in an old HOA email chain. Greg replied within an hour. Greater than I moved because of her. She fined me until I sold my house. Be careful. Karen has connections in the city council. Daniel wrote back, "Did you keep any records?" Greg responded with a single line that would change everything. Greater than meet me tomorrow. I kept everything. The next day, Daniel packed his folder, his evidence, his camera logs, and left his house determined. The retaliation had reached its peak, but the cover-up was about to crack. Because finally, he wasn't the only one with a story to tell. Daniel Pierce drove across town to a small diner off Maple Avenue, the kind of place where secrets felt safe under the hum of old ceiling fans. At a corner booth sat Greg Hanley, a man in his 50s with tired eyes and a stack of folders beside his coffee cup. "Didn't think anyone else had the guts to take her on," Greg said, sliding a folder toward Daniel. "Karen Mallory ruined my life. Fined me till I sold my home. But I kept everything. Screenshots, emails, audio." Daniel opened the folder. Inside were emails between Karen and city inspectors, arranging selective code enforcement. Another page showed HOA meeting minutes altered after the fact. The digital signatures mismatched. And then at the bottom, a photo of Alyssa sitting on an ATV behind the clubhouse, the same model Daniel had lost. His hands trembled. "This is it," he said. "This proves everything." Greg nodded grimly. "It's not enough for court, but if you want the truth out, go public. She controls the HOA, but she doesn't control the internet." Daniel didn't sleep that night. He gathered every file, every time-stamped image, every screenshot, and compiled them into a single digital folder titled The Maplewood Cover-Up. He wrote out the timeline like a crime report: theft by the HOA, president's daughter retaliation through fake violations, evidence tampering, community intimidation. When dawn came, he posted it all anonymously on a local Facebook community page called Maplewood Voices. Within hours, it exploded. Neighbors who had been silent for months finally spoke up. Greater than, "She fined me for having a flagpole. They towed my car for no reason. I thought I was the only one." The floodgates opened. By the end of the day, #HOA corruption was trending in the town's social feed. Local reporters started calling the HOA office for statements. Karen, for the first time, lost her composure. Her carefully curated smile cracked when a journalist confronted her in the parking lot. "Mrs. Mallory, do you deny covering up your daughter's theft?" Her answer, "No comment," went viral that same night. Daniel watched from home, a strange mix of satisfaction and dread in his chest. He hadn't expected the reaction to spread so fast. His phone buzzed nonstop with messages from neighbors, people thanking him for speaking out, others warning him to be careful. By evening, he noticed something strange. The HOA website went offline. The Facebook page disappeared. Karen was trying to erase the digital trail, but it was too late. The screenshots were everywhere. Then came the knock at his door. Daniel opened it to find Officer Brooks, the same officer who dismissed his earlier reports. But this time, the man's expression was serious. "Mr. Pierce," he said, "we've received multiple corroborating statements. We're reopening the case." Daniel's breath caught. "Does that mean?" "It means we'll need you to come down tomorrow. We might have enough to pursue charges." When the officer left, Daniel stood there in silence, feeling the first real sense of justice in weeks. But beneath that relief, a new fear began to grow. Karen wouldn't go down quietly. The next morning, news cameras were lined up at the HOA clubhouse. Reporters shouted questions as Karen, pale and furious, tried to leave through the back door. One camera caught Alyssa in the passenger seat, hiding her face. By sunset, the official headlines spread across local news. HOA, president under investigation after alleged cover-up of daughter's theft. Inside his living room, Daniel stared at the screen. He didn't smile. He just whispered, "Finally." But deep down, he knew this wasn't the end. Karen still had allies, and desperate people do dangerous things when their power starts slipping away. As the screen faded to black, the voiceover closed with a tense question. When the truth finally surfaces, how far will the powerful go to bury it again? The following week felt like a storm rolling through Maplewood Estates. Not a storm of rain, but of truth. Karen Mallory's reputation, once untouchable, began to crumble. Neighbors whispered on sidewalks, news vans idled at corners, and HOA members resigned one by one. But Karen wasn't done fighting. Late one evening, Daniel came home to find a certified letter taped to his door. A final notice from the HOA demanding payment of over $8,000 in fines for disrupting community order. It was her last weapon, intimidation through paperwork. Lena urged him to ignore it. "She's finished, Daniel. Everyone sees what she did." But Daniel couldn't shake the feeling she had one more move. That night, his cameras caught something. A figure sneaking near his garage. Daniel rushed outside, flashlight in hand. The beam caught Karen herself, standing near his fence holding a stack of papers. "Karen," his voice echoed across the driveway. She froze, then straightened her blazer like nothing was wrong. "I came to deliver this personally," she said coldly, dropping the papers on the ground. "You've destroyed everything, Daniel." "My reputation, my family." "You destroyed it yourself," he interrupted. "You covered for your daughter. You bullied this entire neighborhood," Karen's voice cracked. "You think they'll thank you? They'll turn on you next. HOA, city police, it's all connected." Daniel took a step forward. "Then maybe it's time someone broke the chain." Before she could reply, headlights swept across the driveway. Two police cars pulled up silently. Officer Brooks stepped out. "Mrs. Mallory, you're under investigation for obstruction and falsifying HOA records." "You'll need to come with us," Karen turned pale. "This is ridiculous," she shouted, as the officers guided her toward the car. "I built this community. You can't—" The door slammed. Her words vanished into the night. Daniel stood there for a long moment, watching the taillights disappear down Maplewood Lane. Lena came out quietly, resting her hand on his arm. "It's over," she whispered. But Daniel knew something. It was never truly over. Power like Karen's didn't vanish. It just waited for a new face, a new signature. Weeks later, a new HOA board was elected. Fines were forgiven, rules revised, and for the first time, Maplewood felt like a neighborhood again. Children rode bikes down the street without fear. The graffiti on Daniel's wall was painted over, leaving no trace, except in memory. He walked past the spot where his ATV had once been stolen and smiled faintly. "You tried to bury the truth," he murmured, "but it grew roots instead." As the camera faded on the quiet street and the hum of crickets returned, the narrator's final words echoed. "Sometimes justice doesn't roar, it whispers." And in Maplewood Estates, that whisper was finally heard.
All right, folks. If you made it this far, you're officially part of the story gang. If you dug this HOA drama and want to see more wild neighborhood stories like this one, go ahead and smash that like button, hit subscribe, and ring that little bell so you don't miss the next drop. And, hey, tell me down in the comments, what kind of story do you want to see next? Another HOA meltdown? A crazy neighbor revenge? Or something totally unexpected? Drop your ideas. I read every single one. Catch you in the next one. And remember, in the suburbs, nothing stays secret for long. Home fire.